Imagine the scent of fresh corn roasting, the sweetness of berries simmering into sauce, and the comforting steam of tamales wrapped in husks. For centuries, Native American families created meals that nourished body and spirit, recipes richer and healthier than many modern foods. Before we begin, hit like and subscribe. Today we revisit 10 Native American recipes you'll wish you knew sooner. Picture a cool evening on the plains, a fire glowing and the scent of berries bubbling gently in a pot. That's wojapi, the sacred berry sauce of the Lakota people, served at family gatherings and ceremonies for countless generations. It wasn't just dessert, it was tradition in a bowl. The sauce came alive through simple ingredients: choke cherries, blueberries, or strawberries, crushed and simmered slowly until their juices thickened into something glossy and rich. Sometimes a drizzle of honey or maple syrup softened the tartness, but most often it was just the fruit's own wild sweetness carrying the dish. Ladled over, warm frybread or even venison wojapi tied everyday meals to the spirit of celebration. This dish faded from many American tables as processed jams and bottled syrups took over. Yet for those who grew up with it, wojapi still recalls a grandmother's hand stirring patiently, turning wild berries into a gift meant to be shared. Some Lakota families still consider it essential at weddings and powwows, where a taste of the sauce feels like touching the past itself. Imagine you're traveling across endless plains in the dead of winter, no grocery stores for hundreds of miles, only the supplies you carry. That's where pemmican came in, a lifesaver. Invented by native peoples like the Cree and Lakota, it was dense, dark, and powerful enough to keep hunters and warriors going for days. The making of pemmican was part art, part survival science. Strips of buffalo or deer meat were dried low and slow over fire until brittle, then pounded into powder. This meat was blended with rendered fat and sometimes crushed berries, forming compact cakes that could last for years without spoiling. A single piece might fuel a day of hard labor, whether it was chasing game or walking miles across the plains. As modern foods flooded in pemmican nearly vanished, replaced by shiny packaged protein bars. Yet hikers and endurance athletes have rediscovered it, praising its clean, balanced nutrition. Beyond survival, it carried stories of long journeys of families gathering around to prepare it together. Eating pemmican was never just about feeding the body, it was about carrying tradition on the trail. If you're enjoying this trip, hit like and subscribe for more. Picture a bubbling pot over an open fire, the aroma of squash mingling with beans and corn. This is Three Sisters Stew, the dish that carries the wisdom of native farming. The sisters weren't people, but plants, corn giving the beans something to climb, beans fixing nitrogen for the soil, and squash shading the earth to keep it moist. Together they formed a perfect harmony that fed entire communities for centuries. The stew itself was hearty and comforting. Dried beans simmered slowly until tender corn kernels adding sweetness and chunks of winter squash melting into soft golden bites. Some families added venison or rabbit while others kept it entirely plant-based. The result wasn't just delicious, it was a complete meal, rich in protein, vitamins, and warmth against the cold. This tradition faded as canned soups and packaged meals replaced the slow patience of cooking. Yet the idea of balanced plants helping one another, people living in rhythm with nature, remains deeply moving. Three Sisters Stew wasn't simply food, it was proof that survival and sustainability could taste like home. Thinking of these first three dishes, wojapi, pemmican, and Three Sisters Stew, if you had to bring one back into your own kitchen today, which would it be? Close your eyes and imagine a crisp autumn forest floor, the ground covered with fallen acorns like nature's own market. For many native tribes, these little nuts held the key to survival when the days grew shorter and winters loomed. Acorn bread was their way of transforming bitterness into nourishment. The process took patience. First, acorns were cracked and ground into a coarse meal, but raw acorns are loaded with tannins, giving them a sharp, unpleasant taste. To fix this, families would leach the meal with water, sometimes pouring it through woven baskets again and again, sometimes burying it in a cool stream for days until the bitterness faded. What remained was sweet, nutty flour, ready to be mixed with water into dough and baked on hot stones. The finished bread was dense, earthy, and satisfying its flavor, unlike any wheat loaf. It carried people through lean months when fresh food was scarce. While today's bakeries overflow with fluffy white bread, acorn bread whispers of resourcefulness, of gathering together, of turning what the forest offered into something both filling and communal. A bite was more than food, it was resilience baked into every crumb. Picture the high desert at dawn, where the Hopi and Navajo once ground kernels of deep blue corn on heavy stone meddits. The rhythmic scraping echoed through generations as grandmothers turned dried kernels into fine meal for a dish both humble and sacred, blue corn mush. When cooked slowly with water, the meal transformed into a thick lavender-colored porridge, its nutty aroma rising with the steam. Families often sweetened it with wild honey or fresh berries, making it a favorite morning meal. Unlike today's sugary cereals, blue corn mush carried real strength protein and complex carbohydrates that fueled long hours of work under the desert sun. Over time, the dish lost ground to processed foods that promised convenience. Yet for many, the taste of blue corn mush still conjures memories of early mornings when the first spoonful warmed the body and spirit. Some families even preserve medits as heirlooms, their volcanic surfaces polished by decades of use, each bowl of mush a reminder of ancestors' hands. It wasn't just breakfast, it was a bond between earth labor and family. Picture a late summer day on a northern lake, Ojibwe families guiding canoes into tall green stalks swaying gently on the water. With careful wooden poles, they bent the plants and tapped ripe wild rice seeds into their boats, a harvest as old as their prophecies. This grain, called manuman or the good berry, was more than food. It was destiny fulfilled. When simmered slowly, the grains opened into tender, nutty bites. Mixed with tart dried cranberries, wild onions, and sometimes toasted nuts, the pilaf became a dish of contrasts, earthy and sweet, hearty and bright. It was a centerpiece at feasts and a daily sustenance through long winters. As packaged rice and instant meals replaced traditional harvests, fewer families ventured onto the lakes. Yet wild rice and cranberry pilaf still carries the essence of canoes gliding at sunset and hands working together to gather what the water gives. Sharing it today feels like honoring 1,000 years of tradition, one bowl at a time. If you're enjoying this journey, remember to hit like and subscribe. It keeps these stories alive for more people to rediscover. Imagine the wide open plains when herds of buffalo once moved like living thunder across the horizon. For the Lakota, Cheyenne, and Crow, these animals provided everything: food, shelter, even tools. Among the most treasured dishes was buffalo roast, rubbed with crushed juniper berries cooked low and slow until tender. The preparation was simple but full of meaning. Hunters selected a cut from the shoulder or hindquarter, seasoning it with the wild berries that grew nearby. These weren't berries in the usual sense, but cones of the juniper tree carrying a flavor like pine and gin with a sharp resinous kick. As the meat roasted over coals or in earth ovens, the air filled with a fragrance both earthy and medicinal. This wasn't just nourishment. Juniper was believed to aid digestion and protect health, turning a meal into medicine. The slow cooking softened the tough fibers of buffalo meat until it could be sliced with a wooden knife, served at gatherings that celebrated the hunt. Today, with buffalo nearly gone from the wild, the roast survives mostly in memory and revival feasts. But for those who tasted it, the flavor lingers like the echo of hooves across the prairie. Picture a cold winter night on the plains, snow piling against the lodge while inside a pot simmers quietly over the fire. This was bison bone broth drawn from the very marrow of the great herds that once covered North America. Families cracked open large leg and knuckle bones, filling pits with water and hot stones to coax every drop of nourishment from them. The process was slow, sometimes 2 full days of steady simmering, yet the reward was a golden broth, thick with collagen and minerals. When cooled, it gelled into a substance that healed joints, strengthened bones, and soothed weary bodies. Into the broth, people added prairie turnips or wild greens, turning it into a medicine as much as a meal. Long before bone broth became trendy in modern health circles, Native communities understood its value. A single sip carried warmth, strength, and the reassurance that nothing from the animal was wasted. Today, few still make it in this traditional way, but those who do say it tastes not only of bison, but of resilience and survival. Thinking back on buffalo roast bison broth and the wild rice pilaf, which of these would you most want to taste if given the chance? Imagine the crackle of dough hitting hot oil, the smell rising rich and nutty through the air. Long before store-bought oils filled pantries, native hunters rendered bear fat into liquid gold, using it to fry bread that was crisp at the edges and soft in the center. This bread wasn't fancy, it was survival shaped into circles of comfort. The dough itself was simple: flour, salt, baking powder, and water stretched thin and dropped into bubbling fat. But the flavor was unforgettable. Bear fat had a high smoke point, giving the bread a distinct, savory depth that lard or vegetable oil never quite matched. Families paired it with wajapi berry sauce or strips of meat, turning a humble fry into a feast. Over time, government rations and modern cooking oils changed the recipe, and many tribes now see frybread as both a reminder of resilience and a symbol of hardship. Still, the memory of bear fat bread connects people to older traditions when every part of the hunt was honored and nothing went to waste. Thinking about the last 3 dishes, buffalo roast, bison broth, and bear fat fry bread, if you had to share one with your family today, which would it be? Picture the southwestern desert centuries ago, before Spanish influence ever reached the land. Families gathered around earthen ovens, steaming bundles of masa wrapped neatly in corn husks. These were tamales, portable, hearty, and filled with the flavors of the season. The process was as meaningful as the taste. Dried corn kernels were soaked in ash water, ground on stone into smooth dough, then spread onto softened husks. Into the center went rabbit, turkey, or beans mixed with wild herbs and chilies before the husks were tied shut and steamed for hours. Opening one released a fragrant cloud that promised comfort and community. For many, tamales were more than food. They were celebrations wrapped in husks, easy to carry on journeys or share at feasts. Over time, industrial tortillas and fast meals edged them aside, but tamales endure in memory and revival, reminding us how ancient wisdom shaped everyday eating. Each one carries the essence of patience, land, and tradition. Your comments keep these memories alive. Drop yours below. And don't forget to subscribe for more nostalgic journeys into the foods and stories of the past. From sweet berry sauces to hearty tamales, these Native American recipes remind us that food is more than flavor, it's tradition, resilience, and community passed down through generations. Each dish tells a story of survival and celebration of people working with the land rather than against it. Bringing them back into our kitchens isn't just about cooking, it's about reconnecting with roots that still have so much to teach us today. Don't forget to subscribe for more nostalgia and retro memory.